this week's episode is talking about communication and really just how being able to communicate your thoughts and your feelings and just you to others is so important, and that it's a skill in my mind that we need to continually work on, critique, improve, constantly reflect on different conversations, different ways that we communicate to improve those things, regardless of what that relationship is, whether it's a professional relationship when you're at work or you're doing a side hustle or whatever it is, or it's a just personal relationship. You're somebody you're dating, somebody you're in a romantic relationship with, a friend, family, whatever that relationship is, being able to communicate in that is so important. And especially now, there are so many different forms of communication: text, email, video chat, phone calls, memes, like all this shit is going on that is just widening our ways to communicate with different people, which in my opinion just increases the amount of time I think we need to really think about these things, and reflect on them to get better. Just number one, learning the different styles of communication. Is the person a more direct communicator? Are they more passive? Are they a little bit more soft-toned? Or are they a little bit more loud, with that maybe aggressive to you type of tone in the way that they talk and communicate? Which may come off to you as one thing, but to them it's just the way that they communicate normally. And being able to learn those different styles so your perception of what that person is trying to communicate to you isn't misunderstood. And being okay asking that question of, hey, I took this way. Is this really what you meant, or am I misunderstanding something? So being able to communicate your ideas, but also making sure that you're understanding what that other person is communicating to you is just as important. And really knowing when and how to communicate your feelings. I mean, shit, outbursts happen. You get overly emotional about something. Your sports team wins. You're like, you stub your toe on something and you yell shit or whatever. Like, those outbursts can happen, but I don't think they are something we should feel are a natural form of our communication style. Being able to think about and process our thoughts, our feelings, to understand when it is just the appropriate time to open up, and when it's talking about your emotions and your feelings and your reactions to something, whose feelings in that moment need to be taken more into account. If your coworker just had somebody in their family find out like that they got sick, and you're pissed off about some presentation that they just did from a couple days ago, in that moment, their feelings of sadness, remorse, of whatever they're trying to process may be more important to continue to build your relationship with that person, and being able to be sympathetic, be empathetic to them in that moment may be more important than a potential outburst that you may have of your frustration with them because of that thing at work, or your wife, girlfriend had a shit day because they got into a car accident or a fender bender. They went into the grocery store and nothing that they needed was in there. They had a fucking day at work where their boss was just hounding them about something that they had no idea about. But you also had a shit day. Listening to them first, being able to let them just vent might be more important, and being able to take your emotions in that second, keep them in check, but also feeling okay and processing that you can communicate what you're feeling, what your thoughts are, how those things are affecting you are things you need to think about, especially when it gets to the point of something you're realizing is starting to wear on you, starting to really hurt your own mental well-being and your just person. That, hey, your friend may always bitch to you about their job and how bad everything is going. Okay, once or twice, yeah, that might work out. That's okay. Like, everybody's got a shit day every once in a while. Like, don't get me wrong. Trust me, I have plenty days where I'm just like, damn, this was a long day. But, like, being okay with being able to communicate that to them, like, hey, man, like, you only tell me about these shit days you have at work. Like, are you okay? Like, what's going on? Like, you never tell me how great of a day you had. And being able to communicate that, so then they're like, oh, damn, I don't really talk about the good days with them. That's going to help them open up to you, so it's less taxing on you of just like, damn, that negative energy's coming down and it's happening constantly over and over again. But also, it's going to improve that communication between the two of you because, hey, now they're being aware of something that they may not have been aware of before. And just, again, taking that split second sometimes to just think of, hey, is this the appropriate time for me to open up about how I'm feeling, what I'm thinking? Or is that other person in this moment more important to feel heard and feel acknowledged, where I can still communicate what I need to, maybe in a little while, maybe the next day, because what I'm feeling isn't urgent. So a couple of these examples for me, one of my biggest ones was really my first job out of college. I lacked the communication that I've, looking back on and now, realize I really needed. I was good at communicating what was going on with the things that I was doing and the projects that I was in charge of, to make sure that leadership and my team was aware of where we were in these processes, what updates I had. Those things I was very good at communicating, and I needed to be good at very quickly, because if I didn't, honestly, probably would have gotten fired from that job if I lacked the ability to just keep people updated without them having to come to me all the time. But the thing that I was absolutely shit at in that job, and it could have been I was new to the job market and I was afraid that if I expressed how I was feeling, that it might come off as I lacked a work ethic, or that I couldn't cut it for the job. But there were so many times for a long time that weeks would go by of just me feeling overwhelmed, overworked, burnt out. Like, I was working 12 hours a day consistently in a job that was supposed to be about 40 to 45 hours. Like, I constantly was the first one in the office and the last one to leave. And I'm not taking anything away from people who work these 12-hour days or anything like that, because hell, if you can do it, that is great. But at the time, I was working 12-hour days nonstop, taking 20 minutes for lunch basically, because I needed things to keep moving on. And I mean, hell, the amount of overtime I was getting, shit, that was great. Like, I was 22 years old at the time, making what I thought was bank at 22 coming out of college. But the mental just drain that it had on me from trying to just keep my workload consistent, and looking back at it now, I had a team that would have supported me. I had managers that would have been there to back me up and figure out ways to support me and get me through these things that I was so overwhelmed with, because the projects I was working on were so big, which was kind of, in my opinion, why I was like, damn, I cannot communicate that I'm feeling overwhelmed, that I'm feeling this stress, because if I do, I felt I lacked that ability to then continue to grow within the organization. But at the same time, now looking back on it, hell, hindsight's always 2020, that I had a team that was going to support me. They were going to do what they potentially could to take some of that workload off of my plate so I could focus on what I needed to without it being a huge deal. And that was something that I really lacked, was being able to communicate the feelings that I had, while I was good at communicating updates. But hell, hindsight, like I said, it's always 2020, but I feel like looking back on it now, if I would have been able to communicate my feelings of stress, of burnout, then there could have been a whole lot different of a lifestyle for me at that time, because work at that point was my life. That was it. Like, I was so exhausted. Gym, work, home, pass out, repeat, 5 days a week, and that was it. And really, that's not something I feel anybody should have to do, that work is their entire life. Like, having that balance is important, like I've said a million times before. And really, the other example for me in my personal life that I feel I am very good at is communicating within my family. I think my ability to pick up on the different ways that the people in my family communicate have really helped me avoid confrontation when I feel it's not necessary. For me, being able to understand that my parents are people that, yes, obviously, they want the best for me. But if I can't communicate what the plan is and how I'm going to get to what I want, or how what I'm doing is getting me to that next step of where I want to be, there's going to be a lot more questions that are going to get me frustrated, because then it is perceived to me sometimes that they don't think I'm really thinking through what I'm doing. But being able to communicate, hey, this is what I want to do, and this is how I'm going to get there, and this is the steps that I've already done, and the thought and the brainstorming and the processes that I have already begin to put in place to get this done, that this shouldn't be a worry for you. That this is something I'm going to do. I'm communicating this to you because I want you to know about it. But this is what I've done. If you have an input, that's great. But I'm still going to do this. Your insight and your experience may help me be a little bit more flexible, and hey, maybe think about something a different way. But at the end of the day, this is what I've got put in place. Your experience may help, it may not, may change how I'm going to approach this, but this is what I'm going to do. And I feel that because I've figured that out and understand that type of communication style that they really have, has really helped for me do a lot of things that I've wanted to do, and get the least amount of pushback or friction about me doing it. For example, recently just moved down to North Carolina, and the shock in my mother's eyes was very apparent when I told her that I was going to do this. But because I had a plan in place, I had communicated what I had already done, how I had already approached this, what I had already thought through to get me here, the support I felt was more apparent than what it would have been if I just said on a whim, hey, I'm moving to Charlotte, period. Just think about that. You're moving a few states away and communicating that to anybody. What are the thoughts that are going to go through their head of, shit, have you thought about this? How are you going to do this? What are you going to do with all your stuff? How are you going to have a job? What's this going to look like? That going to look like? Where are you going to live? Like, the amount of thoughts that just go through anybody's head when you say something, is a million miles a minute. But hell, if you can communicate, hey, this is what I'm doing and this is how I'm going to do it, they have less questions because you've already answered their questions before they have a chance to even ask them. Like, think about and talk through these things in your head to do that. So, this is the question that I want to leave you guys with this week. How well do you feel that you communicate your feelings and your thoughts to the other people that you consistently interact with? Your coworkers, your family, your friends, your your person you're dating. And really, have you taken the time to think about how they communicate? So you can maybe change how you communicate to them, so you can have a better way of talking and communicating with them consistently. Like, if you are a more direct communicator and your friend is more beat around the bush, have you kind of thought maybe you need to tweak the way that you communicate with them to get things done or express how you're feeling? Like, really, just take a second to think about those things. Like, who do you communicate with? And do you adjust your communication style to help better communicate with them? So that's it for this week's episode. I really hope you guys enjoyed my take on the importance of open communication and all of your just different relationships, both personal and professional. I really am a big believer that thinking through how and what your thoughts and feelings are and then presenting them to your quote unquote audience in the right way is so important. Taking that time for me has been a huge help in getting through things and realizing that if I would have communicated this in that way, it may have come across better. It may have helped my life become a little bit easier. So I really am looking forward to hearing you guys' thoughts, your feelings, and your opinions on this week's episode. Please do leave a comment, follow our social media pages at Build Your Alpha, and I hope you guys join us next week. But until then, take every day as a blessing because the next is not guaranteed. So take that chance, be authentic, and always know that you are the only you.